I briefly touched on this on one of my shorts, and I kind of wanted to expand on it for a full kind of long form video a bit, which is on the importance of simulating or emulating a reality when designing a game. So again, this one's a bit different to the other topics because this one's a little bit more on design, but I figured let's vary things up a bit. This is from a very general perspective, so I'm not going to give detailed kind of instructions or suggestions about how exactly you get about doing these things in terms of emulating or simulating reality as much as possible within your games. There's a lot of great videos out on YouTube about that. This is just more about the general topic of it and what kind of decisions would lead towards a sort of design and how to keep this design principle within you when you're designing games. So, as I said earlier, or in another video, whenever you're designing a game, no matter what, no matter how fantastical or out of this world the theme or topic is, there's a certain form of reality that you're trying to emulate. Because at the end of the day, you're designing games for humans and they need to feel somewhat natural. So I'll give an example. Even though, let's say, your game is set in space, right? Very few of us have been to space. But there's a certain understanding of what zero gravity feels like. No matter what, even though most of us aren't astronauts or have experienced, those zero-G airplanes, most of us have experienced zero-G at a certain point in our lives. Like if you've ever ridden a roller coaster, when you go over a little hump like that, at the very top, you're feeling zero-G. Or if you're kind of in a car going over a hill and you're going a bit quickly, you'll feel zero-G. Even jumping, there's that brief moment when you're in zero-G. So there's a form of understanding about certain things that, might be a bit far away from us, but we kind of know what it feels like. Same way, none of us are knights who wield swords and wear armor, but at a certain point, you may have played with a toy sword or a heavy stick, and you sort of know what it's like to swing that. So you need to incorporate these things so that it's got a natural feel. Now, I know a lot of this sounds a bit obvious, but the topic I'm sort of getting at hilariously through this is the topic of whether one should study video game design in school. Now, there are a lot of good schools that focus really well on it. And I think if you're somebody who has a lot of money, let's just call it what it is, and this is what you really want to do in life, and you want to sort of kickstart it and meet other people who are interested, yeah, I think it actually potentially could be a nice idea. But I think for most people, if you're going to face the world and its realities, it is a bit of a risky move. I'd say more so than a lot of other kind of arts degrees, in the sense that there's a lot of other things that one can study to become a video game designer. And you might even be outranked by somebody who may have studied these things because certain companies wanted a specialist. So for example, you might have a hard time against somebody who's a comp sci major because that's a very hard degree, and somebody who's been very successful at that degree in a very hard school might be very well seen from a AAA company. And that's also just recommendable, like to take that degree because it's great for video game design because no matter what, you still need to write a lot of code unless you're using specific engines. And at least when there's downturns in the industry, a bit like right now when hiring is not super good and AAA is suffering a bit, you have that to fall back upon. And if you're an indie and you've got that great comp sci background, it'll really help you just develop games a lot faster and a lot more efficient. A lot of airplanes today. So that's what I'd say towards that. And in terms of like emulating reality and what to do, like to do it well, experience is really important. And I'm not saying that like a teenager lacks experience or life experience, better said, to be able to develop a good video game. Because there are cases of like very young people who are able to design good video games. I remember the first video game I actually designed was, I think I was 12 or 13. We had an IT class and they had us design a shoot 'em up, but the top-down style one, right? It was a lot of fun, and if I'm honest, I never imagined back then that I could possibly have a career in it. I just thought we were just doing it for fun, and that all video games were made in massive studios in Japan or the US, and that Having grown up in the UK and Spain, I didn't really know if there were any video game studios there. But anyway, it's very nice that it ended up that way. That I was able to have this as a career. That being said, I actually recommend you study something that you're interested in, but you know, can also lead to other career paths. Just because video game design can be studied at home, or in the sense that you can teach yourself, or you can learn through classes and lessons. Like I'm not sure a degree is needed, but having other realities or understanding other things allows you to make better games. So for example, I studied engineering, and I find that a lot of the maths and physics that I learned in engineering has helped in video game design. And then the other degree I studied was in music, and that definitely helped. I write music for the games, it helps with the audio. And I have a bit of like background in art history as well, and that's helped tons in terms of art direction. So like studying and knowing other things is really, really handy because you're simulating reality. And just having these things that you can draw from really helps towards making a slightly more unique game. Like I've got another video up that talks about playing to your strengths, and I think in in a really competitive field like indie games, and in a field where a lot of people who buy indie versus AAA are a bit more intellectual, like they're a bit more cultured. And I'm not just like patting the backs of people who buy indie games. It's just no matter what, when you've got a group that kind of goes against the norm and just buying your typical AAA games and decides to buy something a bit more artistic, a bit more unique, they are going to be a bit more cultured. And they'll appreciate you being as highbrow or as passionate as you want to be about your topic. And I think that's a great thing. And so you should really aim for that. Like one of my favorite TV series, Frasier, when they were initially writing it, there were a lot of talks about trying to tone down the cultural references. But then the producers kind of went, you know what, there are a lot of people in the world with culture. So they just went with it. They didn't try to over-explain the jokes. They went with these very specific, like, highbrow, super cultured jokes, and it went well. And you should never really underestimate your consumer, because end of the day, somebody who's buying a work of art like an indie game is, like I said, probably quite intellectual, quite cultured. And whilst I do believe it's important to have good tutorials and just assume that maybe the level of gaming is not the best, you shouldn't dumb down other things, especially the context. I actually think that you should just go ahead and present things the way you want. And again, like I said, simulate the reality of the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you want to show in your game. And then in their own time, they might look up the other bits and go, oh, that's quite exciting. I quite like that. A lot of the best games in the world are actually about simulating reality. Certainly a lot of the biggest hits. Minecraft was designed based on, well, the designer of it, Marcus Persson, he said that he based it off like him walking around in the fields of Sweden in the countryside, and like these thoughts of, what he could build, what he could do out there. And another game that I keep mentioning, Return of the Obra Dinn, was based on Lucas Pope's like experience with filling in forms and this and that, with also Papers, Please. And like he kind of thought, can I make a game out of this? And he did. He made possibly the best detective game out there. So whilst you don't, and that's what I mean, you don't need to be a detective or a knight or an astronaut to make any of these games. But I do believe that being passionate about understanding how the world works is just so great towards making a great game. Cool. So a bit of a short one this time, but I've got other long form ideas I'd like to try soon. So take care, and hopefully I'll have those new videos out in the next few days. And thank you to all the new subscribers as well. Like I kind of took a pause because I thought that nobody was really watching these, but then I've racked up a couple hours in the last few weeks. So thank you for those of you that stay and have been watching. Cheers.